What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and to another live stream. And today I'm very happy to be joined by two first-time guests on the channel, two people I've wanted to have on for quite some time. We got Jake from 3D Movie Cinema over here with his 3D glasses, staying very much on brand. You guys can find the link to his channel down below in the description box. And my other guest is Sin from Sin's Corner, who I first got to know through Mike's streams over on Did You See That?
Yeah.
She's been somebody I've wanted to have on for quite some time. So yeah, today we are continuing on my series of reviews of Marvel movies I had yet to cover here on the channel. And this is actually going to be the last one for a little bit. I've officially covered all of the MCU films, and now we covered all the Spider-Man films with this one today. We're going to take a little break. Next week, we're going to jump into some Disney. I'm going to have on Rashaji Reviews and Mike of Did You See That for The Lion King, one of my favorite movies of all time. And it's going to be a lot of fun because Mike of Did You See That has never seen The Lion King.
So of course he hasn't.
Yes, right.
Of course he
exactly. So that's going to be a funny conversation. But I do intend on having all of these guests who have joined me for Marvel movies on for a Disney movie at some point in the coming months. But I'll mix and match the guests. So Jake and Sin will not be on together again when I do that, but we will have them on again very soon. But today we're talking about Marc Webb's sequel to The Amazing Spider-Man, simply just titled The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is a movie that is highly controversial in the world of Spider-Man, but for many holds a very special place in their heart. There are some people that the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man films are the better Spider-Man films. A lot of people always have been clamoring for that third film. And this is a film that has a lot going on. It's not only a sequel to the first one, but it was also at the time really heavily setting up tons of sequels and spin-offs that we never ended up getting, that ultimately just kind of feel like a bunch of random setups in this movie. And so let's start off with how we all felt when this movie came out and how we're feeling about it today. For me, the movie came out in 2014, I believe, and I was just starting to date my now wife at the time. I remember we were long distance. I told her I was going to go see the new Spider-Man movie, and the romance element of this film, I remember pulling me in because I was kind of in my little honeymoon phase of my relationship, and so it kind of was what pulled me in. And I would say still to this day, it's the part about the film I enjoy the most, the chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. And when I saw the movie for the first time, I liked it. I liked it a lot, but I did feel like it was a little overcrowded in places. But rewatching it today, I still feel that way. But I will say, I think this is one of the most visually exciting to watch Spider-Man movies. I think there's a lot of cool things to do with Electro, especially in that final battle. And I think it has one of the greatest scenes in any Spider-Man movie, which is the death of Gwen Stacy at the end of the film and the way that that's handled. So, Jake, I'll start with you. Thoughts on the movie when it came out back in the day, and how does it sit with you all these years later?
Well, I loved The Amazing Spider-Man 2012. So and you know what? Here's a crazy thing about me. I literally was on against because I was like, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is Spider-Man. So then when I first got to see the first photos of the Amazing Spider-Man, I'm like, I was curious. Then I saw the first trailer and I was on board. Then I went and saw the movie and I loved it. And then I'm like, I want to see a sequel. And then I saw the sequel. I was so hyped for this movie to where it was like a 10 for me when I first saw it. I was like, oh my God, I love this movie so much, and like Hans Zimmer's amazing score, I thought was just amazing. And I was just like, oh wow, like this movie literally was like a 10 for me. It was so big that like I had a Spider-Man, because my birthday came out was a couple weeks later, had an Amazing Spider-Man 2 birthday party. That's how much I love this movie.
That's awesome, man. I love hearing that, dude. And there's a lot of people who share that opinion, right? And like now I think this movie, something I should have added on earlier too, is this movie has gotten a lot more love as the years have gone on with the release of Spider-Man No Way Home. I think it kind of alters your outlook on the past. Movies have that ability to kind of change with you as time goes on. Sin, what about you? What are your thoughts on this movie? I know you chimed in on last week's stream to let me know you hadn't seen these movies in a while. So I'm curious, how do you feel about this movie after all these years?
So I remember when it came out, we had seen the first one on the big screen, and I saw it once. I don't think I've seen it a second time. Same thing for this until just now. And I remember that there was a lot of divisiveness about it. People felt like, oh, there's just too much. They're trying to cram too much in and blah, blah, blah. And I went and watched it, and I feel very similar to how you did. I enjoyed it, but there definitely were some parts that felt a little too rushed and just kind of cramped in with different things happening with the characters. And I felt pretty much the same this time, except I feel like the emotional beats hit me harder this time.
Okay.
Especially that first half, and of course the scene with Gwen. Now, when I first watched this movie, it's obviously no secret what happened to Gwen Stacy, but when I first watched this movie and I saw that, the last act with her in it, and she's in the taxi cab and she has that coat on, and then I saw the purple dress and then the boots, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be when it happens, because I had the comic book of the issue that came out after her death. That cover of Spider-Man cradling her with that green jacket and the boots and the purple dress or something like that. So obviously when it happened, every time I see Gwen Stacy in a Spider-Man movie, I think she's like in Spider-Man 3 when Bryce Dallas Howard was like, okay, when's she gonna die? But I enjoyed this movie. I am not one of the haters, but I do see that there are some issues with the last half of it. Unfortunately, it's just they're trying to do too much. And despite the fact that this movie's already over 2 hours, let's say 2 hours, 10 minutes for runtime. No, 2 hours, 15 counting credits. So not counting the credits, 2 hours, 10, 11, 12. But it
Right.
almost feels like they should have either tacked on an additional 20 some minutes, or they should have probably gotten rid of one of the antagonists.
Right.
That's what it
Right.
feels like. But it's not a huge complaint, honestly. It's not like I I'm not going to part ways too much with your other guest here, because I thought it was pretty solid.
Nice, nice. Well, I love to hear that. Here's three people celebrating a film that oftentimes gets a lot of crap. I could definitely say that this is probably my least favorite Spider-Man movie, I think, altogether. But I don't think there's a bad Spider-Man movie, if that makes it any better. I think that that's a character that, for the most part, has been handled very well. But the bar has been set very high with the original
Right.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, the two like Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man No Way Home. The bar is very high, I think, in the world of Spider-Man films. And so, yeah, this film, like I said before, was directed once again by Marc Webb, which I think is the funniest name for somebody who's involved in making Spider-Man movies. Of course, Andrew Garfield, I think, is pretty great as a character over the course of time. At first, I thought he was too cool to play Peter Parker in comparison to the version I was well known.
Really?
But yeah, I thought
He
he was
seems
too
so
cool.
gangly and awkward to me.
He
Because he's
is
so tall,
awkward.
and got a funky head, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess he worked a little bit better for me.
No, fair enough. I think for me, I grew up watching the 60s cartoon that my mom used to love. And so she bought me like the DVD collection when I was super young. I used to watch that and like the 90s cartoon. And Peter Parker was always so dweeby. So when the movies came out in the early 2000s, I thought that Tobey Maguire just captured that nerdy.
Oh yeah.
But I do think that Andrew Garfield captures the character of Spider-Man, the quippy, funny character within the suit, probably the best out of the three that we've gotten. I think Tom Holland is a nice middle ground of the mix. But I just felt like, you got Andrew Garfield running around like on a skateboard and stuff like that in the first one. I was like, he was like a little too cool for school, in my opinion. But it's a fairly minor gripe in the grand scheme of things. Of course, like we mentioned already, this is the film that showcases the death of Gwen Stacy. And, we talked about a lot of the things that are included here. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but Shailene Woodley, the actress, actually filmed a whole movie's worth of stuff for this movie as Mary Jane. They were going to introduce Mary Jane into this film, and then it entirely got cut from the film. So, Jake, I'll start with you. How do you feel this film would have kind of been if they tried to include Mary Jane in this film with Shailene Woodley, or do you prefer that they decided to cut her out?
Well, here's a fun fact. She's still actually in one frame of the movie still. At the end of
Oh,
the movie,
okay.
the Rhino drops the car. She's the one, the coffee waitress in the background. You just see like this, and I'm like, she's in one frame of the movie. Yeah, but that's the only frame she's in, like in the movie. And I honestly would have liked to have seen her, because that maybe would have helped. Maybe smoother the plot. But I understand why they did it, because I heard before the movie came out, oh, they cut Shailene Woodley out of the movie because they wanted to focus on Peter and Gwen more, and I just didn't want to feel like there's too many storylines going on. And I understand that. I understand why. I mean, obviously, I personally I think I could see again. Sen. I think I respect your opinion and everything. I do feel like the movie I think runs at a fair pace, but at the same time, I could see where people are watching it going like, "Well, I expected more storylines with Harry Osborn," or I expected like I could see people saying, walk out going, "Why is Harry and Peter? It feels like they just met and now they're enemies. Like it just makes no sense, And I've even heard people like a good friend of mine is like, Electro literally is supposed to be the main antagonist, and he's barely he's like basically an afterthought in this movie because the focus is so on Peter and Gwen or Harry and Peter, and so it's and like the Electro just comes in like, oh yeah, Electro's in this movie. I could
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that there is a little bit too much, and honestly, by the way, I should say, feel free to just if you love this movie, love it unconditionally, bro. I love the discourse and the various conversation here for sure.
You have hot takes,
But
man.
yeah, and I love it. I think hot takes make for the best in this kind of thing. Sin, what about you? Had you heard about the Shailene Woodley thing?
I had not. This was
Gotcha.
the
What are
first
your
time
thoughts
I
on that?
heard about that. So, gee, if they were going to introduce something, would her scenes been filmed to occur when Gwen was still alive? They were going to insert her.
There's a scene in the
Yeah.
movie where when Peter was on when he calls her from the subway, that scene was supposed to be like where Gwen, because she's his next door neighbor, Mary Jane. So Gwen Stacy was supposed to have a scene in that scene with Mary Jane. And I think I don't know if it was before or after Peter calls her. So there's a chance she could still be in the frame in the very background. Because he interacted with Mary Jane when they were because I guess scooter breaks down or her scooter breaks down. They talk, and then Mary Jane and Gwen interact with each other. But yeah, she was just basically I guess supposed to be like a third wheel kind of thing, where she's like, "Hey, I'm Mary Jane," and then they cut her scenes out. It really sucks.
Right, just adding to the complication of Gwen leaving to England and the romance element there. I feel like it would have maybe took away from Gwen's death a little bit too much.
Right, because there was so much of a focus on Gwen and Peter and the difficulties in their relationship and him wanting to protect her, but it was so hard to stay away because he was still so deeply in love with her. And if they threw Mary Jane in, I don't know, that might be, because fanboys would be like, "Oh, yay, there's Mary Jane." But then, Gwen's still around, so I don't know how that would feel
Right.
to have her in there.
By the way, Anthony, did you ever read Kevin Feige's notes during the Sony hack? What he gave the notes to Sony for Amazing Spider-Man 2? Whenever the Sony hack happened, he gave a bunch of notes for the Amazing Spider-Man 2, and one of the notes was he said, "Stop making Electro talk to himself. He is not crazy. You should never make the villain seem crazy." And he did say, "I do like the itsy bitsy spider thing." He has it, Kevin Feige. One that made me laugh was, "I like the itsy bitsy spider thing." He said with Electro. That's pretty cool. But yeah, he gave a bunch of notes, and I'm like, they used only 30% of his notes, and then the rest of it, they were like, "What does he know?"
Yes, he was definitely talking to himself quite a bit. I mean, they certainly Electro was a very sympathetic character. Obviously, he's presented that way. He's also presented as being a little bit off his rocker, and just a little bit too clingy. He's so desperate for attention, and then when all this stuff happens, he just goes batshit very quickly. But I still liked some stuff I liked about his character were so I work in the field of audio. I work in audiobooks. I absolutely loved what they did with his voice. That very deep, bassy, but the crackly sound of the electricity and the hum. Oh, I thought that was really, I don't know, that stuck out to me this time, probably because I had earbuds in listening to it as opposed to in the theater, and it just feels a little bit more in your brain when you're wearing earbuds.
I loved him as I loved Electro. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Jake. But yeah, I loved Electro here, and I thought the sound design around his character and a lot of the bass around the music around his character, and as similar to what Jake was saying, I was really into the itsy bitsy spider thing. I thought that was funny. That whole sequence where they're fighting in the electricity plant, I think is pretty cool and visually stunning. I watched it on my TV where I have the camera that syncs the lights behind the TV to the
cool.
So that made it really enticing to watch because you got all the blues and all the whites and everything kind of clashing in the explosion. So that was cool. I thought that was a really cinematic sequence. There's that great shot of Spider-Man swinging, and this movie I would say has a lot of great action shots. The first film was like that too.
Yes, it does.
Great action shots. Now, sorry, Jake, were you going to say something really quickly? By the way, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say this. Like I said, I think honestly, just Electro. I think he is a great. I love the soundtrack design where it's when they're in Times Square, he lied to me, he shot at me, he's using, like, like how it goes, like, that just makes it where he's combustion. I thought like that Times Square sequence is so great because it's like you're basically seeing him as a victim till he turns into a villain. And I thought that was so great. By the way, the cinematography does not get talked about how beautiful it is. Like that cinematography by Dan Mendel, which is usually J.J. Abrams' cinematographer. He does a great job in this movie. Like, I mean, just like the beautiful, just the first, when you see Spider-Man swinging through the city, I'm like, that's so beautiful. And that's no offense to like, any of the other cinematographers, but I just feel like this one feels like it feels like it's capturing the images off the comic book page compared to other movies.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I definitely agree. I think that this film is one of the most beautiful looking Spider-Man films. There's some epic shots of him swinging around that if you're just a fan of the look of Spider-Man, just the fun of it, I think that this film really captures the spirit visually of Spider-Man. But let's talk a little bit more about the villains of this film. So we have Electro and we have the Green Goblin. We have Harry. Harry's character, I feel, should have been introduced a little bit more in the first film. Maybe their relationship should have been kind of introduced there. I like the idea that maybe they have been apart from each other for quite some time. So like now they're being introduced to each other. But I do feel like he's the most rushed element here. And I do think it sidelines a more interesting villain in Electro. But I do think that both actors do a great job. It's funny because Jamie Foxx's performance here is so maybe overly dweeby at first when we first meet him. It's funny, but like then you see him in No Way Home and you can tell that the direction was like, all right, let's make him a little bit more cool. Versus like making him as dweeby. And when I heard that Jamie Foxx was going to be playing Electro just from the early news, I was like, okay, are they going to go the blue route or are they going to go the classic like green and yellow suit with the like spark like mask? I'm so glad they went the blue route, but I do like that in No Way Home, he wears like that headpiece that kind of like has like the electricity that pops out, kind of like the sparks on the original suit. So thankfully, they've never gone the full dweeby original Electro outfit, but I do like the look that they give him here. I do think it's also funny that his tooth gap gets healed up when he becomes Electro.
I didn't even notice that. That's a good point.
It literally zooms in on his mouth when he's being electrocuted by the eels, and like you see his teeth fuse together. Like I just think that's
yeah, I didn't even pay attention to that.
Yeah. Did you so funny.
Did you ever watch the interviews they were doing for the movie, like whenever the movie was coming out and everything?
I did back in the day.
I was listening to it, and he said, my sister is my makeup designer in the movie. And so I told my sister, make me have a gap tooth. And then this dude's like, oh, we love the gap tooth. We're going to fix it. Oh, let's go great. And everything. And then, of course, he said, I want to look nerdy, like Nutty Professor. You know how the Nutty Professor looks nerdy and everything. He said, make me look like an ugly nerd. And then Electro is like his awakening, And I'm like, I like that aspect. The only thing is some people compare it to like Poison Ivy and Batman and Robin or Jim Carrey, the Riddler. Usually say like, it's a nerd that basically is thrown away by society, then becomes an evil villain. And I'm like, I'm fine with that. I mean, obviously I've seen it done poorly, like much, much poorly in other DC film and other movies essentially. And so it's like, I think this, honestly, I don't think it's a bad thing. Although, by the way, there was a scene, his mother, he has actually, it's still in the movie, I think a little bit, but in the background, he actually doesn't live alone. He lives with his mother. And it's a weird freaking subplot because his mother apparently is sick and he's caring for his sick mother. And it's in the deleted scenes and apparently his mother is being paid by Oscorp to be sick and keep him occupied. And I'm like, what?
Wow. Okay.
It makes no sense. It's like I'm gonna be sick and trick my son. I'm like, what? I can see why they just cut that. I'm like, look, that makes no sense. Well, where are we going with this? I'm like,
that's a strange one. There's a lot of deleted scenes for this movie. This movie has quite a few. Like, we'll get into it in a little bit, but one of the most popular deleted scenes of this film is at the end where Peter's father appears at when he's going to visit Gwen Stacy's, grave. His father appears, and there's like a whole emotional scene that you can find online with Andrew Garfield being like, "Where have you been?" kind of thing. And I'm so glad they didn't include that because I feel like it would have added just this layer of like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
But let's continue on with the villains. Jake, you've spoken about Electro. What are your thoughts on Green Goblin?
Green Goblin, the faux Green Goblin? No. Then when people say Green Goblin in my head, I'm like, that is my Green Goblin, is Willem Dafoe.
Right.
Like, yeah, his Green Goblin. Okay, Dean DeHaan. I think honestly, I feel bad because he doesn't really get, like, everyone knows, because I feel like he got the short end of the stick, because everyone knows it's kind of like Joker. If you think about it, look at the Green Goblin, it's kind of like he got the Joker treatment, where you had Heath Ledger's Joker, and then and Jared Leto kind of gets the short end of the stick because he gets thrown into a movie that's like too many plot issues and all that stuff, to where it's like, okay, well, nobody likes you because, you know, you're in a bad movie. You know, I feel like that's kind of like with Dean DeHaan. It's like, oh, Willem Dafoe did such a good job that, you know, you're kind of in this movie in a rush with a bunch of villains and everything, to where, yeah, you're kind of the side-in Green Goblin. And I didn't really like, there are things I like in this movie, and I like how when he gets the Goblin Serum, how his body, like, transforms, like, his body, and he's, like, crawling on the ground, and it's just brutal. You see his bones breaking in to make, like, a goblin form, and, you know, he gets in that suit. I thought that was so awesome. And everything when he gets, like, and then at the end, the big battle at the end with him and Peter, I thought that was pretty cool. But I just feel like, and I like that he's dying and he wants to save himself. I mean, I like that aspect of it, but I just feel like I didn't like him just looking like a goblin, yeah, like I thought that was too like 80s for me, like reminded me of like John Carpenter Escape from New York vibe, where it's like, why is his hair stuffed up and why is he like I'm like this, like, okay, like you couldn't put a mask on him. I'm like, I mean, that would have been fine. I mean, just, but I was fine. I'm like, I still would love to own the figure for that character, because I just like that movie so much. So I'm like, I would still own that figure.
Nice. What about you, Sin? How do you feel about the villains in this film?
So in the first half, I felt like things were pretty evenly paced, but like I said, in the last half, or let's say the last, I don't know, third of the film or so, it felt like they were rushing a lot of stuff, and that Green Goblin, well, is he really Green Goblin or is he Hobgoblin? Because wasn't his father supposed to be, like, this is what confuses me about this character.
Right.
But the stuff that happened with him, like once he got injected, like it just happened way too fast for me. When he gets injected, he has this transformation, and somehow he just magically, there's the suit, and he magically knows to get in the suit. Like, how and why? Because he didn't know about all this stuff before. All of this was new to him. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, that's highly convenient. You know, like these things, it's just like we needed a bit more of the puzzle pieces in between all of this to make this make sense. Because there was a lot of convenient stuff that jumped out at me, you know, like that thing with the suit. Oh, how convenient that Gwen Stacy knows the grid specs. Okay. And how convenient that there's the key to the lock that she needs to use to open the thing to do this. You know, like this is the stuff that kind of starts like, oh, they were just really they had stuff on fast forward and it needed a little bit more time to breathe, I feel like.
Or
so that's how. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say.
I was just underscoring these are the frustrations I have with the character, with the Goblin character. I like the introduction in the beginning. I like the chemistry between him and Peter. But it did feel like once he got the rejection, he just went completely off the deep end, and all this stuff was just on fast forward. Stuff went very conveniently for him at the prison when he broke Electro out, and it just, I don't know. I got a little bit twitchy about some of that stuff. It's not enough to make me hate this film, because I don't, but it's just those are some of the flaws I see in it.
Yeah.
The one thing I was gonna say is what really, like I said, the point whenever he, I was like, the dumbest thing I'm thinking is, you have Electro with you and he's basically helping you get everything, and like he's basically your muscle. Why would you tell him to leave you? And then when you're going down over the gun, he can literally, there probably has security that can like, literally just like grab you and you're done. Why the hell would you just do that?
Yeah, a lot of conveniences. This is the stuff I'm talking about. Yeah.
You have a gun, that's it. You have a gun. I'm like, Electro can literally scare him, like, you better do this.
Yeah.
And instead it's like, I'm gone. After I destroyed this guy's heart, I'm gone.
Yeah. And how quickly he bounced back, I tell you. When he was revived, there was no recovery time. He's just up and he's able to just completely function like normal. I don't think that's how that happens, but I know it's a comic book movie, but whatever. Right. A little bit of realism about some things would be great.
Yeah,
I agree though. You guys make some really good points. You know, I think that they I do agree a lot with what Sid was saying, is that the last half just starts to kind of like lose its way a little bit. And I do think that introducing Harry and Norman in the last film, even if it was briefly, I think really would have done a lot for this movie because,
Agree.
Rewatching, I didn't do a full rewatch of all three of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films recently because I had already covered the first two, but I've seen those movies a million times. I rewatched the third one though, and it makes sense in that film when James Franco's Harry is like turning goblin because he's learning things about his past and his father, and he finds all this stuff that his dad had that he knows his dad used. Whereas in the case of this one, it's more like, and by the way, in terms of names, I believe he's known as the Green Goblin here, but in the third Sam Raimi film, he calls himself or he's called the New Goblin versus
New
like
Goblin.
the Hob. So it's like it's weird because
Yeah.
like technically, if we're going by like character names, like in the newer
Yeah.
Spider-Man movies, Ned should eventually become a Hobgoblin. I don't know if they'll ever take Ned in the direction of the Hobgoblin. It would make for an interesting storyline for sure, to say the least. But yeah, I do think that the villains here would have been interesting in their own films. There's just a lot of them, and I mentioned earlier there's a lot of setup for what's to come. So you have you have the Rhino in here as well, played by Paul Giamatti.
I had totally forgotten he was in this movie, and when it showed him at the beginning, I'm like, "Is that Paul Giamatti?" No, that's not. But then it was like I saw later on the cast list. That is Paul Giamatti.
Like, I'm honestly, this is if Nicolas Cage was ever Toyman in the DC universe, this would literally be that character. I'm like literally just going like this. Literally, he's just having a field day, going like, "I am the Rhino," and I'm just like, that is so great. Like, he literally is just, he knows what he's in for. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he definitely understood the assignment and was having fun with it. And I would have loved to have seen the Sinister Six movie that they were planning. Of course, now all that's pretty much in the trash. And with Kraven the Hunter coming out in a few months, I don't know if you guys have seen the trailer for that, but the Rhino is in that.
I'm staying away from the trailer for that because I don't want to be influenced, but I'm looking forward to it.
Gotcha. So, no spoilers, but Rhino is in that. And they look like they're going more of the classic biological approach to him, where it's not a suit, it's more of like a organic takes a serum of some sort that like makes him the Rhino.
Anthony, have you ever played the Amazing Spider-Man 1 game or the Amazing Spider-Man games?
I have, yeah.
Remember the Rhino in the Amazing Spider-Man game?
I don't, to be honest. I'd have to go look back. I played it when it first came out, but I don't remember the design because Rhino's one of those characters that's been in like almost every Spider-Man game, and he's different in pretty much all of them.
Well, in that game, like, he looks just like the one in Kraven the Hunter. Like, he looks just like that one. I'm like,
right. Like
I literally had to go back and look like, what? I was like, but yeah, like in this one, I just like that it's a man in a suit. Like, I'm like that it's not just like that it's not like, oh, I'm gonna turn into a Rhino. Because I feel like one thing I liked about the Raimi movies is they always felt like Raimi approached it like these aren't like, I don't want to do anything over fantastical. Like, I think except for like, and then of course, Spider-Man 3 happened, and then we got Venom and like Sandman. But with the first two movies, he kind of felt like these are accidents that, you like Green Goblin, who's the man who has poison in his system that basically is going, split personality disorder almost. And then Doc Ock is kind of like, this person who wants to like, make the world a better place. And then, this one, I feel like I like the idea that he's just a gangster in a suit. And I feel like this is where, like, and I feel like the Raimi movies kind of embrace more of that, like, the fantastical side of things where, like you have a guy who turns into a lizard, or you have like a guy who turns into electricity, and this one. And I feel like, the Rhino kind of does feel like, and Green Goblin kind of feel like, okay, they're kind of, I guess the Green Goblin side, they're kind of going into like, I am a goblin. Yeah. Like where this one, they're going into like, I'm just Paul Giamatti in a suit, which I like the ending of the movie where he's fighting him. And I know people like, what? They don't see the whole fight. And by the way, when I saw this movie, the trailers spoiled the hell out of the movie. Like 80% of the movie was in the trailer. Like even Peter crying about Gwen's death was in the trailer.
I don't even remember. So
80% of the movie.
The trailers nowadays, or for at least the last couple of decades, it makes me miss the old days of like trailers, even trailers from like before my time. Like I remember I used to love watching like old trailers for movies that came out before I was born. And I love the Star Wars ones because they were just like Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Star Wars. It's like that's all you
Yeah.
needed. Like I'll
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
there, like there wasn't much to it. But now everything is so like the perfect example recently for me was the new remake to Speak No Evil with James McAvoy that the trailer just showed everything. Like thankfully I enjoyed the film. I thought it was executed well, but like it was just so my brain couldn't help but just check off
Because
the list of
you
like every
knew,
single.
yeah, this is part of the reason. This is a large part of the reason why I stay away from trailers for the most part, especially if it's for a movie that I do anticipate watching. So I
Right.
haven't looked at any of the trailers for Speak No Evil. They've come on in the theater, but I will either plug my ears or just start reading my phone and just tuning it out. But I know this is based on this is a remake of a film from a couple years ago. I have not seen that film yet. I figure I'll just wait to watch that until after I've seen this one.
Right. I intended on watching the Danish film from 2022 beforehand, and then I just never got around to it. But I still plan on checking it out just to kind of see how it compares. I've heard the Danish
Yeah.
one is a little different.
Okay.
But it has the same one of the writer and director of the original one are brothers, I believe, and they also wrote this new one. So they're still involved to some degree.
Interesting.
Um,
Okay.
So yeah, that's an interesting thing. But we do see that a lot with these trailers that are just showing way too much.
Too much.
And before we
Terminator.
continue the conversation, sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, I'm saying Terminator. Look at that, Terminator. What's that? Genesis. They literally
Right.
revealed the big twist in the trailers. And you're like, what?
Yeah, I remember.
That would have been a great twist in the movie. And instead, you're just like Terminator Genesis, or like what was that one movie that came out? Everybody's mad about. Like, for instance, Rise of Skywalker. They reveal Palpatine is back. That would have been great reveal in the freaking movie.
Right.
Or Abigail was one.
Abigail, yes. That one really annoys me. A lot of people mention that, and then some people try to push back against the folks that are aggravated about it. It was like, well, I would have liked to have gone into that movie not knowing at all what was up with that girl, because it
Right.
wasn't obvious to me until they revealed what was up with her in the trailer. So then I go
Right.
in the whole time knowing. That would have been awesome. This awesome twist, go in, know there's some sort of horror element, right? Because they could construct the trailer to let you know this without showing you that she's what she is.
Right.
I think I would have. I enjoyed the movie. It's fun, but knowing that really took a lot of the oomph out of it.
It's the biggest twist of the movie. It's like literally revealing the biggest twist. Like revealing, it'd be like showing Gwen Stacy's death in Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's like,
yeah,
I just see her death, and then like they even, by the way, they even show that in the trailer too. And I'm just like,
I didn't remember that. No, I'm sure I probably saw the trailers, but I didn't remember. Honestly, I don't remember. Maybe I didn't, because I wasn't as big into going to the movies as I am now. But like I said, when I saw her in the outfit, I knew because I had the comic book. I was like, oh,
yeah, I saw the
where she's
tee
gonna
up.
die.
Right, I saw the tee up too with the outfit and the fact that they were kind of forcing in a goblin of some sort, and the whole story is about her like leaving and stuff.
Yes.
I was like, oh no, like and then I
all
knew
this foreshadowing going on.
right, and I knew the behind the scenes that Shailene Woodley was meant to be in the movie, so I was like, okay. I'm glad that they didn't include her because maybe it would have taken away from that impact. Like we don't need a third wheel in a story that really you got to feel that romance there. But I was like, okay, they're gonna do a comic accurate because the Sam Raimi films jump straight to Mary Jane, whereas comic book accurate would be Gwen Stacy's first. So
right,
I was like, okay, we're gonna do this properly now and move forward. And they never ever were able to bring it to full fruition because we never got an Amazing Spider-Man 3, which we're all going to talk about. But before we get into all those other things, just look at some of the comments here. Mike, did you see that popped in here to say, hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Said he's in the cinema right now, about to watch Dan, great tongue twister. So I'll be watching on playback, but recently rewatched this on the big screen and liked it. However, the aspect of Peter's parents, I still don't like. Harry Osborn is also very rushed and should have at least been introduced in the first outing, which I agree. But he doesn't blame Dane DeHaan. Yeah, I think Dane DeHaan does a good job. Of course, Mike, letting us know how much he loves Emma Stone. If anybody knows Mike knows, he absolutely loves Emma Stone. I remember he texted me right after he saw Poor Things to let me know he was so grateful to Yorgos Lanthimos for having her.
I am so glad I stayed away from that movie.
That was
I would not like
it. Of the year. That was his favorite.
She was. It was interesting for sure, and if it's a weird one because she's like supposed to be a child in a in an adult woman's body,
Yeah.
but she has like this sexual awakening in the film, and she ends up like sleeping with a bunch of people. And it has things to say about manipulation and grooming and things like that, but it's also showcasing a lot of this stuff, so it was a little strange.
Mark
But I
Ruffalo
guess
is a
Fear and
perfect
Emma,
example of a scumbag in that movie.
yeah, Mark Ruffalo killed it in that movie. I won't lie. He was absolutely hilarious. He also said that I'd love to know you guys' thoughts on if they made an Amazing Spider-Man 3 at the time when these released, and what would you have liked to have seen them do? And then lastly, I have somebody popped in here. I'm not sure who this is. Midnight Towboy saying Insane Jedi, what's good? Insane Jedi was my old Xbox gamer tag when I was a teenager. So
Oh,
it's an old friend, but I have no idea
you don't
exactly
know.
who that is. I don't know based on that name. So thanks for chiming in and bringing up my old gamer tag. So yeah, let's touch on really quickly. I want to talk about Peter's parents. I want to talk about a possibility of an Amazing Spider-Man 3 that's even still being asked for till this day, especially even more so after No Way Home.
Right.
But how do you guys feel about all the things that they left in this film that never came to fruition? We knew a Sinister Six movie was being planned. They introduced Felicia Hardy in here. Felicity Jones is in here as Felicia Hardy, who, for people who don't know, is Black Cat,
Black
a
Cat.
very popular Spider-Man character. So they were teasing her introduction. She's been a big character in the Spider-Man mythology for a long time, and they've never included her in a film like ever, like properly, which still blows my mind. So Jake, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on all the things that they included here that were meant to kind of spin off into other things that just never happened?
Well, I was really bummed because I like at the end when they were at the end when they were setting this all up, where it has all these like you see Doc Ock's tentacles and all that in the Sinister Six, and even in the the closing credits where they're playing that great Alicia Keys song, it's on again, and you all of a sudden you see like Mysterio, you see Doc Ock's tentacles, and you see Craven's knife, and you're seeing all this cool stuff. You're like, Amazing Spider-Man 2, like, oh, it's getting good. They're setting up really well because. Yeah, like Sinister Six, yeah. Because I remember they were planning on doing 2016. They said summer 2016, Amazing Spider-Man 3. Then they said, of course, Sinister Six is coming later. And then yes, I'm like, oh, I was like, I can't wait. And I'm like, oh, 2016 can't get here soon enough. And then you find out 2014 that Andrew Garfield did not want to do Amazing Spider-Man 3 because he did not like what happened. The way that was handled really bummed me out because I'm like, I understand why. He even said that personally, I did not like the way the studio butchered this version of the movie, and and so he's like, which apparently, he said there was a longer cut of the movie that the studio just did not like. They said they wanted to make it more marketable, and so they said they cut it out.
I'm surprised they haven't released that longer cut. That's kind of a thing now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and there's so much on the cutting room floor of this movie. I would say, out of all the Spider-Man movies, this is the one that I feel had so many plot lines and so many actors that were cast. And I remember seeing like you see it today, this person is going to appear in this movie. And it's like not very often that those characters or those actors are cut entirely. So I remember like the Shailene Woodley thing is another thing that would have been a whole other element to talk about here. But Sin, how do you feel about all the elements, Felicia Hardy, the Sinister Six, all these things, the Rhino being in here, all these things that were teeing up other stuff? Do you think it hurts the film, or is it something that you don't mind too much?
I don't think it hurts it too much. I think those are minor in comparison to the other issues that happen in the last half with the fast forward and the not very utilized Goblin story arc and all of that. I don't think the other stuff that they inserted in here is a detriment. Personally, I would have liked to have seen a third one. I was definitely down to watch a third one. I didn't realize Andrew Garfield had quit himself. I thought they just decided not to do it because this one didn't go over so well, or it was so critically reviled, or whatever.
You won't believe what happened, but because of the Sony hacks, they revealed what happened. Because what happened in 2014 because the Interview movie was coming out. So North Korea hacked Sony and revealed all their data and stuff. And what happened is the reason why we first found out that Marvel and Disney were going to make a deal, or Sony and Disney or Marvel were going to make a deal, was because of the Sony hack. And they said that happened was Andrew Garfield, because they were going to go ahead, even though the Amazing Spider-Man 2 did not do as well as they hoped. We're still going ahead. F Marvel, we're going ahead. And what happened is the head of Sony was doing a big thing in like Paris or something, a big presentation up front. And Andrew Garfield was there, and he was supposed to come out, and he was going to give a big speech like, Andrew Garfield is here, and he's Spider-Man, and we just had a great, amazing success with Amazing Spider-Man 2, and he's going to be an Amazing Spider-Man 3 and onward, and get investors really happy. And then Andrew Garfield was there, but he's like, I don't want to come down. And he said, oh, I'm sick or whatever. And so after that, the CEO changed his notes and then said, make a deal with Disney, make a deal with Marvel, because fire him now. And so they did. And I'm like, all because he didn't walk downstairs and just shake the head of the studio. I'm like, that's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, that's wild to hear. I didn't know all that. I remember seeing a bunch of the stuff that came out. I remember that the Sony hack did leak the fact that Marvel and Sony were in conversation, which eventually this led to just a few years later, literally I think 2 years later, we got the epic introduction of Tom Holland Spider-Man and Captain America Civil War, which honestly I wouldn't change anything that's happened. I think it all worked out for the best. No Way Home, being able to bring these actors together, I think was a great part of it as well. Sin, I'll start with you this time first. What are your thoughts on the Peter's parents element of this movie? The first film includes them a little bit too, but there's like so much about both of these movies. It's about the secrecy of the stuff they had under wraps, and there's a whole like subplot in this movie of Peter going and finding like an underground like base,
Yeah.
the Roosevelt like train base. Like,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on the Peter's parent element of this film?
So I had forgotten that they were in the first one a little bit. I did not rewatch the first one. I just rewatched this one. I didn't mind that they were throwing that secrecy in there, but something that kind of bugged me was that why all of a sudden was Peter curious to find out more? He had his father's briefcase for how long, and he only just now started looking into it? I thought, like it was like the conveniences, right? All of these things just magically coming together, and he very easily and quickly finds all this stuff, in the coins, and he goes down, and all this stuff magically still works in the Underground Railroad.
Right.
I felt like that was probably something that maybe wasn't necessary, though. I felt like the intro was pretty impactful, showing what happened to his parents. I thought I had heard something about one or both of his parents showing up again at the end, but then I convinced myself that was my imagination. But it must have been that I heard what you were talking about the deleted scene of his father showing back up again. So I don't know. Maybe it's just another example of them trying to cram way too much story into too little time.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I don't even know how I would feel if they had included that deleted scene, like it would have just added such another layer.
No, it would have diminished completely the death of Gwen Stacy.
It would have
because
been
then here you're doing this extreme gear shifting in some other direction, and it just would have been like, wait, what? And that would have felt. I don't think I would have liked that if they had included that.
You know what it felt like? Whenever after people watched Ang Lee's Hulk, they'd have been like, everybody was like, what? That's how people would have saw it after they saw Amazing Spider-Man 2. They'd have been like, what?
What are your thoughts on the parents element there, Jake?
I mean, like, honestly, like, I like at the opening, but then, yeah, like, if they would have included that, I would have been like, it's so dumb. I'm probably the only person that does not give a shit about Peter Parker's parents, because I'm like, he has parents, the aunt and uncle. I don't give a shit. Like, I like when Sam Raimi, that they never really mention his parents. I'm like, I don't care about his parents, okay?
Yeah.
I don't care if they work for Oscorp. I don't care, okay? That to me, that's just filler to me. Like I said, okay, it's cool. Like, you can reference that in a headline. Hey, they worked for Oscorp, they died. You can read. We're smart enough to read between the lines. I mean, like, I don't think it's gonna be like. I understand some people won't be able to get it 100%, but like, I'm fine with that. I mean, I read headlines all the time. I'm like, yep, that makes sense. And so it's like, I'm just saying, like, that to me, it's like, I will say the only thing I do like in the whole thing was the plane crash sequence when he's fighting and you see his wife is dead and then he's just like dying. Like, that to me, I thought was really cool. And I thought that was really impactful scene. But then, like, I just don't care. Like, I just don't really care about the parent. I like just the aunt and uncle, like, especially in Amazing Spider-Man 2 when Aunt May goes, "You're my boy."
Yes.
That, like, yes, okay.
That's a powerful scene. Yeah, yes. Love that.
No, that's a great scene. I was gonna say Sally Fields for sure. Martin Sheen didn't have a whole lot of time to shine in the first film as Uncle Ben. He has his moments though, but Sally Fields is so good in both these films as Aunt May. And I don't know if you guys have seen any of the like red carpet events where her and Andrew Garfield just kind of bump into one another. He's still so like protective of her and kind of treats her like a
Aw.
motherly figure. If like after this, if you guys go on YouTube and just look up like Andrew Garfield, Sally Field, red carpet, like there's so many cute moments with the two of them post this movie, and you can tell that their chemistry like really staying true through the creation of these movies. Quickly, and it was D Movie Man popped in here to say, I wish I could share Mike's eternal thirst for Emma Stone,
Hey, D.
but some things are not meant to be. Yeah, it's so funny, man. I love
He
how
really
much
does
she
like her.
likes it.
Let me ask
So
you guys
funny.
this, okay? Who do you prefer more, Kirsten Dunst or Emma Stone?
Emma Stone.
Yeah, I'd say Emma Stone. I would say that like rewatching specifically Spider-Man 3 a few weeks ago, like the relationship by the time you get to the end of Mary Jane and Toby's Spider-Man is kind of frustrating. And of course, in that movie, he's got like the black suit Spider-Man, so he's kind of being a dick. But like, it becomes kind of frustrating and grating. Whereas I feel like obviously Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield actually dated during the releases of these films.
Oh, that's
So,
interesting. I didn't know that.
so their chemistry, I
Explains their
think,
chemistry.
yeah, really, it comes through 100%.
Does for sure.
I just can't stand Kirsten Dunst in those movies because I'm just like, she just comes off as so annoying. It's like,
Yeah.
it's almost like, especially in Spider-Man 3, where it's like there's a scene where she's like walks out and she's like, they're all clapping and she thinks they're applauding her for quitting. And then Spider-Man walks by and then she gets mad at Peter because I'm like, and then she goes, this isn't about you. This is about me. And I'm just thinking, this is called Spider-Man 3. This is not called Mary Jane 3. Okay. I'm just like, I was rooting for the villain the whole time. I'm going, please kill her. Please kill her, Venom. Please kill her, Venom. Please kill her, Venom. Please kill her. I'm just like,
Yeah, I was never
never
crazy about her.
I just never.
I don't think she was. I don't. Number one, I don't think she's that great of an actor, especially in these movies. Yeah.
Right.
She just plays, and then on top of it, have you seen the interview she does when they asked her, "What do you think Emma Stone advice for Amazing Spider-Man? Have fun looking at nothing." And I'm just like, well, that's really shitty to say. Like,
yeah, she felt maybe a little salty about it at that point.
She's also come out not, in recent years complaining about the pay gap. It's like, shut the heck up. This is not a movie about Mary Jane. This is Spider-Man. He's going to be paid more than you. That's just the economics of it, and it makes sense. But she tried to turn it into this. So I lost a lot of not that I was ever really liked her all that much to begin with, but it's like she really came down in my eyes when she started doing that. I just don't think she was good in the role.
My favorite performance from Kirsten Dunst is Jumanji, and that's probably where it'll stay, to be honest. But I did like her in Civil War earlier this year. Oh,
she was.
Yeah, I like her in
good.
Small Soldiers.
She was good in Civil War. She was okay in Interview with the Vampire. She was a child. She was annoying, but she did.
I think she captured that like young girl energy the best. That's why I like her in Jumanji. There's something, mind you, that movie has Robin Williams, so there's a different magic there too, and so she plays off of him really well. But I feel like that age range of hers is probably my favorite because I feel like she captured an innocence that felt like natural. Whereas certain movies later on in her older years I don't feel as much. But Civil War is probably my first time in a while that I saw her in something. I'm like, okay, that was a pretty solid performance.
I will say I'm not like how Mike feels about Natalie Portman. I'm not that. I don't feel that way towards her. But I will say there is one actress, like for instance, Kirsten Stewart. That is exactly how I feel. How Mike feels towards Natalie Portman. How I feel towards Kristen Stewart. But as for like Kirsten Dunst, I was saying I don't think she's bad in everything she does, except whenever I'm watching the Spider-Man movies, it just makes me cringe so hard because there are just some moments I'm just like, why did Sam Raimi cast her? Why? Like, Elizabeth Banks is right there. She would have been a better MJ.
Some of it might have also been I know what you mean. I don't dislike her to the extent that I dislike Natalie Portman, and I do dislike Natalie Portman. I'm just not super crazy about Kirsten, but sorry, Anthony.
Listen, there's gonna be no Natalie Portman blasphemy
happening. Can't stand her. No, absolutely cannot.
She's the best.
No, sir.
It'll never happen, but she's my hall pass with my wife. So
my goodness. I got some very specific reasons why I don't like her. It has nothing to do with like the movies that she's in, but I think the way Mary Jane was written, and I don't remember if she was quite like this in the comics because it's been many, 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 many years since I read Spider-Man. I was like a kid, but I don't like how her character was written in here. She was wishy-washy. She was kind of materialistic and superficial. She was going with Harry. He was Harry, right? In that one, he was Harry.
Yeah,
And
Fred
yet
Right.
was
she's kissing on Spider-Man. And then in the second movie, she's about to get married, and then she's running away from the altar. It's just like I did not like the way they wrote her character.
Right.
It's
I
just
agree.
it made me not like. How can you even trust this chick? She just jumps from one person to the next,
Yeah.
whoever is her interest at the time.
she's
And the
just
So
same
a
thing
horse
happens in the third one. Yeah, the same thing happens
yeah,
in the third one where she runs to Harry, who obviously is just
yep,
Harry like manipulating her in a way, but
hmm
like it's yeah, it's messy for sure. Really quickly as well, D movie man left the last comment saying, "Oh sin, still no blonde wig or hair dye." Well, there's
I was
always
making
Dragon Con next year,
it was a comment about the thumbnail you made.
right?
Because I was like, I saw that and I was like, a long time ago, I used to think I wanted to be a blonde when I was in high school. And I saw that
Right.
picture and I'm like, yeah, no, that's not a good look for me.
To be fair though, not my best Photoshop work, but just trying to have fun. I did it to a guy last week when we covered. I had made him Gwen Stacy,
I
and he had
saw
a
that.
yeah, he had a thumbnail on his channel where he had like a cigarette in his mouth. So I just was like, let me play on that.
That's
Um,
funny.
so yeah, I had to have a little fun with it. Somebody had to be Gwen Stacy in this thumbnail.
Yeah, Dee
Um,
was offering to like help me bleach my hair at Dragon Con this year. So nah, no, it's not gonna
that
happen, Dee.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, one of my favorite parts about talking about these movies in general has been the discussion on Marvel movies in general these days. Of course, now everything's kind of funneled into the MCU, right? We had the Fox era of movies, we had the Sony era. Sony's still doing their own thing with Spider-Man, but like for the most part, everything is kind of all together now, even if they're pulling from some of these older films. It's been no surprise, or like maybe not no surprise, but it's been no secret that a lot of people online have a lot of discourse about the current state of Marvel movies, the amount of things releasing, the TV shows, that connectivity they used to love. How do you guys feel about that? And what do you guys want to see moving forward with Marvel movies? Are you on the train that's kind of lost a little faith in Marvel, or are you kind of still enjoying the ride? Jake, I'll start with you, and then Sid, I want to hear your thoughts as well.
Well, yeah, I love everything, including it. No, sure, I'm not. I'm not that sorry. Like no, I actually there are things I do like. Like for instance, I didn't hate the Marvels. I did not hate the Marvels. I did like there are. I will say Thor: Love and Thunder. I don't think it's a bad movie. I just think the visual effects were not done, and the visual effects were done. I think it would have been a much better movie. But the fact is like there's like 20 CGI shots. I'm like, what the hell is that? Like. Which and but then like there are certain movies I do like. I like Deadpool and Wolverine, and I liked, of course, there are a couple of Marvel films I do like, and I was like Secret Invasion. I don't know why people are like, I'm like, if Secret Invasion had come out in 2014, people would love this. I'm like, Secret Invasion was awesome. I don't know what the hell they're smoking. I thought that was awesome, and everything. Although I did not like She-Hulk. I thought She-Hulk was just like a big troll to me. Like I'm like. But then again, I understand people are saying, well, it's supposed to be a fourth wall break and everything. It's not supposed to be serious. I know, but I guess maybe because I was just really salty because I wanted an Incredible Hulk show, instead I got like, a twerking Hulk, and I was kind of bummed about that. Which, I will say there are things that they can improve on. I would like to say, like, I don't think the multiverse is the problem. I think, honestly, just as long as the story is well done, because it's like winning cures everything. And so if you have a good story, like for instance, if Doomsday is amazing and a Secret Wars is amazing, then people are going to not care. But when it's bad, that's when people complain, and I think that's when it is. It's like, oh, every time like a Sony film comes out, oh, superhero fatigue, rather than like, okay, whenever a good Marvel film comes out, Deadpool and Wolverine, nobody was talking about superhero fatigue. But now, like, and so I think that's what it is. Winning cures everything. And so if you have a good story, you have a good director and good actors and everything, it's going to make everything better. And I just want a good story. That's all I want.
Fair enough. What about you, Sin? How do you feel about the current state of the Marvel movies? What do you want to see moving forward? I'm curious to pick your brain on this.
Well, speaking to what he said about superhero fatigue, I don't think it's that at all. You're exactly right. It's not superhero fatigue. It's bad story writing fatigue. That's what it is. And what happened was that Disney, they just went all out, full speed ahead, quantity over quality, and that made the franchise as a whole suffer. And after Endgame came out, I just had this feeling, this is it. This is peak. and it's going to be downhill from here. There will be some bright spots. No Way Home was a bright spot. Deadpool and Wolverine was a bright spot. But like as a whole, I feel like unless they course correct and kind of just pull back on this influx of all these shows and crappy writing and accusing fans of being racist or sexist or whatever the hell they accuse fans of being, just get back to like what it was in the beginning. The early days of the Marvel movies were, yeah, some were better than others, but at least it was pretty solidly written stuff. And it was stuff that people were turning out for. And now you're getting to the point where people's like, yeah, I don't care to see that, so I'm not going to watch it. There have been Marvel shows I have not watched because I don't care. And there have been Marvel movies I haven't watched. I didn't watch The Eternals. That was the first Marvel movie I did not watch, and I did not watch The Marvels. And I don't care, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything. So I just want them to get back to quality over quantity. I'm fine with if it's only one movie a year, maybe one show a year. That's it. But they're just throwing too much at the wall. I don't think it's helped them.
No, I agree for sure. I think it goes without saying that like post Endgame, I think they thought they were invincible. And yeah, like you said, there's been a lot of bright spots. In terms of shows, I loved WandaVision. I enjoyed
WandaVision too,
Falcon
yeah.
and the Winter Soldier.
Oh, I hated that one. Oh my gosh.
Really? Okay.
Oh, I
Fair
despised that one.
Fair
But
enough,
yeah,
fair enough.
no. And I was really looking forward to it. Sorry.
No, but
Yeah.
that's okay. But I think that's kind of part of the conversation, and I've had a lot of fun discussing these every week with different people because everybody's had different takes. Some people have loved what the MCU is doing, and some people have been really disappointed. And I think that there was a phase that you're talking about where like people were showing out, and there was that discussion of like whose people's favorites were. But even people's least favorites in the early days weren't bad movies. They were just lesser than these other really well received films. And so, yeah, I think when it comes down to shows, yeah, I think the best one they've done probably is Loki personally. With I think I really enjoyed Moon Knight as well. But yeah, they put out Miss Marvel or She-Hulk that just didn't work for people, didn't land as much, that were a lot more scratching your head. Eternals I enjoyed, but like I think more than anything, that continuity is another thing that we're missing. There's so many projects, so many characters, and so many of them haven't returned again. Like I think about the end of Shang-Chi, which I think is a solid movie. I rewatched that a couple months ago, and like you have that movie, and you have the ending just kind of like sets him up to go off with the Avengers and head out with Benedict Wong as Wong, and they haven't done anything with him.
Right.
It's been years,
I've almost forgotten about that character.
Right, exactly. And so there's a lot of these characters that have yet to kind of come together. And I think like you think about the first couple phases, and they were able to like trickle these characters into each other's movies and have certain ones have their own movies. And then we get the Avengers like 4 or 5 movies later. It wasn't this like, now we're at a point where like I think phase 4 had like 15 to 20 projects in it or something like, and that there's no Avengers movie in that, there's no conclusive thing. And I think once we get to those Avengers movies that we're leading up to, especially with the Russos doing them, I have faith that they'll be able to take from what has worked in all these various stories and these characters and bring them together. But it goes without saying that like clearly they've done too much. But I am hopeful, as they have said, that like for instance this year our only movie was Deadpool and Wolverine. Next year I think there's a couple of movies, including the new Captain America, which plays off of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So hopefully that's a little bit better for you, Sin.
Don't plan to go watch that. Have no plan. See, this is the thing. Like there's some movies where I'm just going to pick and choose because number one, I've never been sold on Anthony Mackie as Captain America. Number one, I don't think he's got the personality, the charisma to carry that role. I think he was great as Falcon. He's a great side character. I just don't think he's got the screen presence to be numero uno. And so I'm just have no interest at all in that film. I don't plan. I mean, I might change my mind, but as of right now, I don't plan to. I'm not excited about Thunderbolts. Just even though I like the character of Yelena, I just don't care.
What about Fantastic Four?
Not super excited about that. I'm tired of Pedro Pascal. Yeah, I'm kind of tired of him. I might go see it.
My dad is in the same boat. Every time I talk to my dad, he's
overworn his welcome, and he's gotten a bit too mouthy and has gotten away with it. Whereas with Gina Carano, she was slammed. So like this disparity, it aggravates me, and that it does carry into the stuff they work on. He's a great actor. I loved his performance in Wonder Woman 1984. I'm not saying I won't go see Fantastic Four. I'm just not. I know. I loved his performance, and it's a hot take. I actually enjoyed Wonder Woman 1984, even though I know a lot of people don't like it, and I get why a lot of people don't like. See, this is yeah, it's like things work for different people in different
I'm in
ways.
your camp. I'm a fan of 1984. I remember I saw it opening day in theaters, and I
So
remember
did I.
it did
I
the
saw it in
HBO
theaters
Max.
too.
Yeah, I did that HBO Max and like
Yeah.
theater
Day
release.
date, yeah, so stupid.
And I know it was so dumb. And I saw it in theaters, and I came out and I was like just gushing over it. Maybe it's because I saw it in a Dolby theater and it was just like it hit me right. But I watched it again on HBO Max. But when I came out of the theater and it had already been on HBO Max for a few hours, like the amount of negativity I saw all
I was
over social media.
surprised.
Same. I was so surprised.
I
I
came
wanted to
home,
like
gave it a good review. You know, I recognized that it wasn't as good as the first one, but it hit a lot of emotional beats for me. I mean,
Right.
I actually cried during that scene where she had to walk away from Steve. To me, that was extremely touching.
Right. I agree.
And the score and all of that. So yeah, it surprised the heck out of me that it wasn't as well received as I thought it would be.
Right. Nah, I definitely agree.
I wanted to watch. We went on Christmas Day because my
Yeah,
Right.
cousin
same.
she took all of us on Christmas Day, or not the day after Christmas, I think. Yeah, the day after Christmas. We went and saw it in theater, rented out of theater because it was COVID time, and so
Yeah,
we
those
rented
where they
out
were
of theater.
spacing the seats apart.
Yeah.
Like full capacity was really 25%.
We
Right.
watched the movie, and I was like, I was thinking, after I watched the movie, I said, one of my friends like, "What do you think? Should have watched it on Max." That's what I said. Should have stayed home and watched it on Max. I was like, I just didn't like it. I mean, but my thing is this is, and I'm glad you liked the score. I liked the first 10 minutes of the score, but I felt like Hans Zimmer scored the movie for 10 minutes and said, "I'm gonna go work on Dune. You got this, right? You got this. Yeah. Well, I don't have anything to score it with. Just use my other tracks from other movies. Okay, I'll do that. All right, I'm out." And he's like, "All right, I'm using this score from this movie. I'm using this score from this movie."
I had forgotten he scored Spider-Man 2.
You forgot.
Right.
Well, I mean,
I had
him and,
forgotten.
like 6 other people did. Like it was like 6
Yeah.
other people that worked on this. Like, and it was musicians, which I honestly like. I wanted to like that movie. Which I don't hate I'm not a huge DC guy. I think I could tell you more about DC than Marvel any day of the week. Although like Spider-Man's my jam, X-Men are my jam, and like Fantastic Four, but like and Punisher, but like DC's my jam. And honestly, I will say this. DC, I'm excited to see what James Gunn does to the DC because I'm so excited for Superman Legacy.
I am so not.
You're not?
I am not. I'm not planning to watch that movie. No.
Oh man,
No.
I am so excited for it. I mean, I'm just hoping. I've always wanted to see DC have a continuity that's
good
like
run, yeah.
strong, you know. Like, and I think they could have course corrected with what they were doing. I thought they had a really strong cast. They had all the right pieces. Starting over, don't know that's the best choice, but I trust the people behind it, so I am hopeful. In the conversation on Marvel, though, next week though we continue on the MCU with Agatha All Along, the follow-up.
Oh, yeah,
I
that
cannot
one.
wait for that. I cannot wait for that.
Yeah, so I'm a little hesitant on it, and I think it is going to possibly lean into that divisive camp of MCU. You know, I think there's going to be some people who love it and some people who don't love it. I'm a little mixed on the marketing personally, but we'll see for sure. I think it goes to say, based on this conversation here, that there's a lot of different takes on Marvel, and that kind of like thing of the past where you used to be like, did you see the new Marvel movie? And people were all excited about it.
Yeah.
Now it's become a thing of like, I'm not going to see this one, but I'll see the next one. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
And
yeah,
you know, and I think it has created this divide of a lot of people skipping shows, and then they go to see a movie and a character from the show pops up and they're like, who the hell is that? So it's like there is a little bit of that element of just like that need to watch everything Marvel related has kind of simmered down for a lot of people,
yeah.
which is a shame, you know. But hey guys, this has been so much fun to do. Real quick, Black Hats Media popped in here to say happy Friday, everyone. Hey man, what's going on? This has been so much fun to do. Loved hearing you guys' thoughts on this movie. So I just want to take a moment as we wrap this up. Jake, anything you want to plug over on your channel, and give us your final thoughts on Amazing Spider-Man 2 as you do that.
Well, first off, thank you for having me. This has been awesome. And secondly, I just did a review for Batman Returns because the Penguin comes out next week, I believe. And so I
Right.
wanted to cover because I haven't yet got to do Beetlejuice yet. So because I've just been busy on vacation and everything. So I just did Batman Returns review, and then next week I'll have Beetlejuice review. And I've been playing Outlaws because it's kind of like a chore. I'm just trying to get through it as much as I can. But then whenever between the lag, the game jumping, skipping, and everything else, like the glitch and everything, hopefully once I'm hoping a new update comes out so that way it'll be perfectly playable. I've been trying to play Outlaws, and of course, try to get a review for that. And I really do like this movie. I think honestly, it feels like a Spider-Man, and I'm not trying to be hot take here, guy, but it feels more like a Spider-Man movie than Spider-Man Homecoming because I feel like he's doing more Spider-Man things, and I like the fact that he doesn't need an Avenger or doesn't need a superhero. He can do this all on his own. Like he has a massive world that's trying to kill him, and it's him versus the world compared to when you have other movies like Homecoming or Far From Home. He's like, oh, I got Iron Man on my side, I'm good, or I got Nick Fury on my side, and I think that's my biggest issue with those movies is because it's like they try to make him Spider-Man Jr. rather than Spider-Man, and I think that's why I like this movie because I remember watching this then going to see not Civil War but Homecoming, and I walked out of that movie disappointed compared to walking in this movie when I was like, oh my god, I loved Amazing Spider-Man 2, and I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, and I was the first time I watched the Spider-Man movie and I was disappointed because I was like, even Spider-Man 3 I wasn't disappointed with, but I was disappointed with this movie, and I'm like, it bummed me out because
Wait, with Homecoming?
yes.
Oh yeah, okay. All right. I thought
I was
that's what you were talking about.
disappointed with Homecoming because I'm like, he just wasn't Spider-Man to me. It felt like he's just like, guys, watch this. I'm shooting my webs. Oh, cool. I mean, he wasn't annoying as the Flash. Okay, I just want to point that out. The movie Flash, the Ezra Miller Flash. He wasn't that annoying. But I'm just saying sometimes he kind of felt like a little bit borderline where is he a moron? Like, because it's like he's just doing this stuff, and I'm like, versus Andrew and Toby, where they felt like, which I understand people now watching the whole trilogy, he's not yet Spider-Man. It's kind of like the Smallville approach where he's like a teenager growing to be a man, and I understand that now, but at the time I'm just getting aggravated because I'm like, why is he I don't understand why is he acting so dumb? I'm like, it's funny between being funny and then being annoying, and I feel like he's going more the annoying route than being funny. So it's like, but yeah, I do like this movie though because you feel like Andrew's Spider-Man is fun. You want him, like, especially when he's sitting on top of the Rhino's car going, like he's sitting there having a conversation with the Rhino and his head's out.
But with his head hanging down, his feet right. Yeah.
That's funny to me. I like that aspect of it, and he's like, or when he tells Electro, like, oh yeah, God to them, and he goes, a god named Sparkles?
Yeah.
Or when he takes the hat, when he puts when he's like the fire department, he gets the water hose of the fire department and hoses Electro down, and he's wearing her hat, and he's like, all right, good, we got it.
Yeah.
It's like that to me was great. I'm like, that's great, and I think that really captures Spider-Man in a way. Like that's something, especially if you've ever played. I don't know if you've ever played the PS5 games. Those really capture Spider-Man to me. Like those capture those beats, especially the second game is so good, especially with when they introduced Kraven the Hunter in that game. It's one of the best storylines I've ever. I would say if you've never played the game or if you can't play the game, watch the cutscenes on YouTube. They're so good, And but I will say this is a great film, and I will always cherish this. Even if we never get a Spider-Man movie as as theatrical as this, what I mean is it's so grounded in a world where it's Spider-Man's self. I hope with the next one we get that. I'm hoping and praying, but I'm not holding out too much hope because I know it's I'm hoping the new director that he'll try to make it more like the Raimi films or the Webb films and less more like the Marc, But that's what I think about it.
That's awesome, man. Well, I love your passion for it. I really do, man. I love it. Clearly your passion for Spider-Man comes through, and I think that's clearly what it's all about, when you're watching movies like this. Sin, what about you? Anything you want to plug over on your channel, things you got coming out or just recently came out, and your final thoughts on Amazing Spider-Man 2?
Yeah, so my most recent video was something I released yesterday, which was a review for My Old Ass, which was
All
a
right, nice.
surprisingly great movie. And before that, I guess it was Beetlejuice. I've got some reviews. I forget what I've done, but yeah, that's my latest one. Tonight, I'm going to go see Speak No Evil. Tomorrow, I'm going to go see an advanced screening of Transformers 1. And
Nice.
Sunday, I'm going to go see The Killer's Game. So maybe sometime next week, some reviews for those will come out. That's all I know in the immediate right now. And as far as Spider-Man 2, I mean, just basically everything I've already mentioned. I really like the emotional beats of this one. It was very, it's a very sad movie, and you can kind of feel all of these foreboding elements woven into the storyline from the start of her speech at the beginning, where she's talking about life being precious and the time we have and not losing hope and all that, and then what happens to her at the end. I love their chemistry. I feel like compared to a lot of Marvel movies of today, this was quite solid, but it does suffer from some rushed elements, some characters and situations not having enough time being fleshed out, where things just felt a little bit too crammed in that second half. But as a whole, I enjoyed it. I don't dislike this film.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I loved hearing both of your guys' thoughts. It was tons and tons of fun to talk to you
Thank
guys.
you.
And first time having you guys on the channel, and definitely look forward to having you guys on in the future.
Awesome.
I am moving into the Disney era for a little bit. We will be getting back to Marvel movies I've yet to cover in the future, but we're going to be moving into Disney. So the next time you see these two faces on here, we'll be talking about some random Disney film. Will it be a good one? Will it be a bad one?
Please
Who
let it be
knows?
a good one.
I'll say this. I only have two planned right now, and they're vastly different. Next
Okay.
week is the first one. We will have The Lion King, like I said before, with Rashaji reviews and Mike of Did You See That? Of course, a classic film, one that I think most people enjoy.
Yeah.
And the next one after that is going to be moving into October. So I am having two individuals joining me to talk about the Disney Channel original film Under Wraps, which, if you've ever seen a Disney Channel original film,
I've seen that one. Interesting.
they are something. So it's
Don't
going
look
to be
under
a
the
lot of
bed
fun.
is terrifying. Don't look under
What
the
was I
bed.
said?
Don't look under the bed is terrifying as a child.
I actually covered that one a few years ago. Yeah, I did a revisit, and it's not as scary on rewatch. It was scary when I was a kid, but yeah, it's definitely one of the creepier Disney Channel movies. But those movies, quality-wise, can be a mess. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about a lot of Disney films moving forward. As far as for me, anybody watching this at this point, yesterday I dropped my review for the new Halle Berry film coming out this coming week, Never Let Go.
Never Let Go. Okay.
Yeah, I dropped my review yesterday morning as well. I had a lot of videos yesterday, so I'm so sorry. Video yesterday morning for Transformers 1 that I got to see a couple weeks back. That comes out next. I dropped the review yesterday. The movie comes out next week. And I also dropped my review for the video game Star Wars Outlaws that Jake was talking about there, that I actually have had very limited glitches experience with. So I've heard a lot of people have had bad glitches, and I didn't have the same experience. So I talk about that in the review. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Definitely give both of these guys some love. Go down below to their channels. It's in the description box. Tons of great movie-related content over there. And we'll see all of you guys in the next one. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.